Throughout the years of watching different media, I've noticed a pattern within them, and that is that they can often be put into outlines, or in other words, genres, and what is expected of them. Same goes for Stalker. It is an FPS, but what kind of FPS is it? Is it like this game or that game? Is it an FPS at all? Maybe it's horror or an immersive sim. Perhaps it is all of them and yet none of them at all. As is often the case with great works, the Stalker video game series has multiple inspirations. Now, permit me to ask, what makes an outline or genre? How do you define it? What do you look at to define it? You might be wondering why I keep using genre and outline a lot. Well, the reason for that is actually the very definition. In the online dictionary, two meanings have been ascribed to genre, and they are: 1. Style or category of art, music, or literature, or 2. Denoting or relating style to something. And I personally believe that it is not right to look at it that way. Sure, Stalker does say that it is put in a specific genre, but what is said about it and what it actually is are more complicated than that. And so I decided to look at it in an outline instead. Before we continue, I also wish to state what is the meaning of an outline. The online dictionary rather generously gives us four meanings for what an outline is. 1. A line or set of lines enclosing or indicating the shape of an object. 2. A general description or plan showing the features of something but not the detail. 3. Draw, trace, or define the outer edge or shape of. 4. Give a summary of. And what's rather interesting is that when you try to put Stalker into an outline, you will see that the lines that make it are not all following the same shape or color, but are rather an amalgam of many figurative, differently colored, shaped, and layered lines, and they consist of hard sci-fi, cosmic horror, adventure, philosophy, roleplay, immersive sim, FPS, religion, politics, and nationalism, even those. To see our outline, we must first draw it, and to do that, we must become familiar with the colors and lines and the different ways we can use to draw with them. Now, many veterans of the Stalker series will know that it was rather substantially influenced by two works of media, and those are: first, the movie Stalker by the legendary director Andrei Tarkovsky. A bit of context: this movie is not particularly pleasant. It is rather strange, and one could even say that it is an acquired taste. And that itself has been blessed with a screenplay by the writers of the story on which the movie is based on. We'll get to that shortly, of course. It has been categorized as sci-fi fantasy or science fiction art film. I even remember that once it was defined as thriller. Now, that's what I wish to start with: thriller. And what can be considered thriller? Now, Wikipedia states that it's a genre or fiction with numerous, often overlapping subgenres, including crime, horror, and detective fiction. Thrillers are characterized by defined by the moods they elicit, giving their audiences heightened feelings of suspense, excitement, surprise, anticipation, and anxiety. Now, in the same page, it is stated that there have been at least two TV series called simply Thriller, one in the US and the other in the UK, the latter in the 60s and the former in the 70s. So we can say that thrillers became a thing around those times, in name at least. However, in effect, thrillers have existed since ancient times. The page states that the first recognizable modern thriller was The Riddle of the Sands by S.K.E.R. Childers. Stalker movie being made in 79 definitely drew inspiration from the popular way of storytelling, but gave it its own twist. Among the many elements of thriller in Stalker, the suspense and course and of course setting and themes are the most prominent. Now, the movie, however, despite gaining its status as a masterpiece and perhaps even the director's magnum opus, would end up being the cause of his and his wife and main star's untimely passing, due to exposure to chemicals which resulted in the growth of cancer within the three people. Here is a more detailed account of what happened. After an earthquake forced the director Andrei Tarkovsky to abandon his plans to shoot principal photography in Tajikistan, the crew relocated to an abandoned hydroelectric power station in Estonia, where they shot a more minimalist version of the script. Sound recorder Vladimir Sharun has since spoken out and said that he believes that contamination from a chemical plant located upstream from the set ultimately caused the deaths of Tarkovsky, his wife Larissa, and actor Anatoly Solonitsyn. He said that we were shooting near Tallinn, in the area around the small river Jagela, with a half-functioning hydroelectric station, Sharon said in 2001. Quote, up the river was a chemical plant, and it poured out poisonous liquids downstream. There is even this shot in Stalker, snow falling in the summer and white foam floating down the river. In fact, it was some horrible poison. End quote. All this has contributed to the sense of unease when watching the movie for some people. For others, it added mystique. It would seem that much akin to the story of the crow, there was a curse that this story carried. However, it is undeniable that it contributed heavily to the video game series and served as a major source of influence, but I still wish to go deeper to the story that made Stalker possible. Roadside Picnic by the Strugatsky brothers, Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. It has been labeled online as a philosophical science fiction novel. All of that could be proven in one simple excerpt from the book. A picnic. Picture a forest, a country road, a meadow. Cars drive off the country road into the meadow. A group of young people get out carrying bottles, baskets of food, transistor radios and cameras. They light fires, pitch tents, turn on the music. In the morning they leave. The animals, birds and insects that watched in horror through the long night creep out from their hiding places. And what do they see? Old spark plugs and old filters strewn around, rags, burnt out bulbs, and a monkey wrench left behind, and of course, the usual mess: apple cores, candy wrappers, charred remains of the campfire, cans, bottles, somebody's handkerchief, somebody's penknife, torn newspapers, corns, faded flowers picked in another meadow. Science fiction has been one of my favorite subjects, ever since I first encountered it. First, by being introduced to the magnificent Jules Verne, which I was told that his stories contained, quote, that which was as of yet impossible, and yet it could very much become possible if we try to make it so. And that believability is what made me fall in love with it, and I believe it is the same with many others as well. Nowadays, two subgenres have emerged: hard and soft sci-fi. In one, the accounts lean more towards the fictitious, and in another, more towards the scientific, albeit the Strugatsky brothers' account is well balanced and strictly defines itself as a philosophical sci fi. Events would lead to GSC trying a more hard sci fi approach, that is to say, base it or rather ground it more in realism than in fiction. However, others have also labeled the story as something else. Cosmic horror is a subgenre of horror popularized by the prolific writer H.P. Lovecraft, in which people are put in contact with forces greater than themselves and beyond their understanding. It emphasizes the horror of the unknowable and incomprehensible, more than gore or other elements of shock. Now, if we look at Stalker, we can see the elements of cosmic horror in all its forms: the zone, the artifacts, the extraterrestrials, and the anomalies are all unknowable phenomena to us. However, they're all well aware of what they are, they have their purposes, incomprehensible to us, and yet we try to meddle anyways, using them to fit our, in comparison, mundane purposes, which results in terrifying resolutions. Now, the portrayal of religion in Stalker, I have to say, is mostly done through three factions in the game series, at least, and one object in all Stalker media, and that is the Wish Granter. The Wish Granter is obviously the object of man's desire. In other words, this object may even be the god of the people in this story, for it is what they all aspire towards, and what is their final destination. It is their heaven and their hell, and what they put all their hope in. In the games, this is mostly portrayed through the Monolith faction, showing what fanaticism and too much belief could result in. The two cut factions of Final Day and Sin also show another side, how suffering leads to fanaticism and how fanaticism leads to suffering. And again, putting your belief in something such as a wish granter instead of trying to fix your problems and complete your purpose through use of logic will lead to a sad fate for you, as many stalkers have learned in their first journey into the zone. Now, politics and nationalism. Now, funnily enough, at one point in time, I believed that these two should be entirely separate from creative works. However, if you look at it, that's almost impossible. Life in itself is political, and art imitates life. The YouTuber Can't Game Right showed me that it is not always necessarily a bad thing for a work of art to take things from politics. Most factions in Stalker have an eerie similarity to the Ukrainian political parties or Slavic cults or Eastern groups and organizations. Even the zone itself, which was not originally set in Chernobyl, was moved there, so one could say that we owe much of what we have to the Ukrainians showing us the zone through their own proverbial lens and doing a respectful portrayal with none of the groups being portrayed as an outright villain. Rather, everything is treated as a complex matter that deserves your consideration at the very least. For furthermore look into the factions and politics and nationalism in the zone and what inspired those things, you can look at Can't Game Right's video, or you can watch Peach Cobbler's video on factions. Those two videos are rather popular with the community. Now, insofar, we've been mostly treading through the realm of fiction, but what if fiction broke through the barrier and entered reality? As it happens, that's what many people experienced when the Chernobyl disaster happened. Stalker and Roadside Picnic asserted their status as more than just fiction. They were now prophetic premonitions of a horror not from outer space, but rather one with incomprehensible power that was in the hand of man, and it was man's meddling that would lead to it being brought life into this world, something that we think we can control and manipulate to our own will, and yet the truth is that it has a will of its own, that at least is partially unrecognizable to us. GSC promised much when making Stalker, and it tried to overshoot with its ambitions, the remnants of which you can still find in the first game. The purpose was to make role-playing immersive sim, in which you or any other NPC could complete the main task. It was to make you feel as if you were truly there, a total and complete soft simulation, with the setting being initially set in different places until the team finally decided on Chernobyl, and as a result also making it a semi-post-apocalyptic game as well. So, although this can be covered more professionally and perhaps even more extensively, I believe that this is quite enough for us. To get our outline throughout this video, I have brought up different examples to illustrate that Stalker is not part of one specific genre or genres often associated together. It is an acquired taste, since it is a blend of many genres to bring about something new. It is like a new food, unpopular, not because it is unsavory, but rather because only a select few would dare stray away from the usual. It is an amalgam of all things mentioned in this video, put in just the right amount, a genre that resulted in neologism, and I believe that it is time for it to do so once again. My personal opinion is that the right word for such a genre containing such elements should be stalker-like. I have heard the word used before, however it had only been given vague definitions. Obviously there are other ways that we could refer to it, but this one just seems fitting, for the outline at the very least. So that's the thought. And I hope that it's one that you'd keep with you and consider what would be your outlines for stock.